When you talk about the Montreal Canadiens of the 1940s and into the 1950s and early 1960s, there's a number of names that stand out. Uh, Maurice Richard, Henri Richard, Jean Beliveau, Boom Boom Geoffrion, and of course, the incomparable Doug Harvey. Now, before there was a Bobby Orr or a Paul Coffey, there was a Doug Harvey. A lot of people believe that Doug Harvey was the best defenseman of his generation. I tend to agree. He was named number 6 in a Hockey News top hockey players of all time, and in a recent poll was named the top 100 hockey player of the 20th and 21st century. Now, he played the majority of his hockey with his hometown Montreal Canadiens. He was born in Montreal. Also played for the Rangers, Red Wings, and Blues, and was a player coach of the Rangers for one season, and also was a had a similar role for the Kansas City Blues in the minor hockey leagues. Now, born and raised in Montreal, he played junior hockey for local teams, and eventually joined the Royal Canadian Navy during the Second World War. Um, he spent the bulk of his time with the naval hockey team. He did see active service with the Merchant Marine. A standout athlete, he also played Canadian football and baseball at this time, though gave up on both sports to concentrate on hockey. Now, he was signed by the Canadians. So he made the team in 47. But, his style of play wasn't really favored because he was too open ended, sort of like Subban and Bobby Orr, very, very aggressive. And after a few years refining his abilities, he was quickly hailed as one of the best players in the league and probably the top defender. Um, he was voted the captain of the team in 1960, but due to personal demons, I'll get into a little bit later on, and ongoing contract disputes, he clashed with management, and eventually he was traded to the New York Rangers in '61, where a lot of people thought he was a drinking problem in his age. I think he just wanted out of Montreal. Now, he spent 2 years with the Rangers before the team felt he was no longer effective. He spent the next 5 years in the minor leagues, enjoying his time as player coach and a motivator. He also briefly played for Detroit before he joined the St. Louis Blues during the 67-68 playoffs. He spent one final year in the NHL with the Blues before retiring in '69. Now, following his end of his career, he served in numerous coaching and scouting roles, including for the Houston Aeros of the WHA. But his drinking problem, which was part of the later end of his career, eventually hurt him in his post what he called ice career, like as a player. Now, he did reconcile with the Canadians a few years before he passed away, and he was also serving as a part-time scout before his unsightly passing. Now, he is one of several Habs to have his number retired. He's number famous number 2. Now, with the Canadians, Doug won 6 Stanley Cups and played in 11 total Stanley Cup finals, including 2 with the Blues. And he won the James Norris Trophy, and he pretty well should have called it the Doug Harvey Trophy. He won it 17 times, and he was named to the end of season NHL All Star team 11 times, 10 times as the first All Star and once as the second All Star. And Harvey was elected to the Hockey Hall of Fame in 1973, and undoubtedly, probably, it woulda, shoulda, coulda. We always think about the 1961 to 1965 years for Montreal. They were in the wilderness. He never won a cup until that 1965 season. The 3 years that the Leafs won straight, Montreal wasn't strong without Harvey in the lineup, and it sure showed because they weren't the same team. It took a number of years to replace him with Savard, Lapointe, Robinson, Langley, players like that. He quarterbacked the much of the power play, quarterback on the shorthand as well. And basically, his style can be best described as an interpretive defenseman. He would gain his own, and he would always use his skating style and passing to set up not his line mates, but the 5 that were playing at the time. We'd always see him headman the punk and the puck, and I think the terminology headman probably started with Harvey because if you look at the old tapes in the 50s and 60s, you can see he was setting up mostly all the great goals. Now, the six Stanley Cups is kind of funny, and a little story behind it. In 1954, he accidentally put a puck in his own net when he tipped it past goalie Jerry McNeil that allowed Detroit to win the cup that year. And McNeil was so crushed at the goal that he retired to coach junior hockey, but returned to the Habs. So he had a kind of the Steve Smith incident before the big air of the Montreal Canadiens occurred. Now we look at the top six players of that late 1950s dynasty of Montreal, and he was again the big cornerstone, the rebellion monument of the six players on the ice that needed to be there. You had Plante, Harvey, Maurice, Henri, Beliveau, Dickie Moore, whoever you wanted to play in the power play. You know, and the big problem too he had with Montreal, he believed that the franchise was holding him back. He at one point he was earning less than $30,000 a season, and he was considered a superstar. And his pay was almost 1/10 where it should be for and the big error, of course, which kind of contributed to drinking. He was one of the first ones, including Ted Lindsay, to help organize the Players Association, which so infuriated the Canadian owners that he traded him to the Rangers as sort of a penance. Now he did win the Norris Trophy in his first season as a Ranger, but he was, like I said, he was disrespected, and that came to be a problem. Now the rebirth of his career is quite interesting because um, he was given a chance to get back to the NHL with Detroit in '67, and he pretty well showed up overweight. But uh, when he revised his career with St. Louis, he was playing kind of a defensive version of himself, kind of what he called a mimic of what he used to be. But he was very effective, and he knew how to play against the big teams like Montreal. Although St. Louis had very little success in those those years, he basically he showed that players with experience could last in the league more than now. And you see a lot of veteran players now, like Doug Harvey, he would shift teams, and he was the first person really to shift teams to continue his career. But who knows what would have happened if he wouldn't have had so much battles with Montreal management, so many battles with the press. He had some bad coverage by certain of the French reporters because he figured Harvey shouldn't get all the claim, where Maurice and Beliveau and Jeffrey maybe stirred the drink, as we say. But he could be the straw sometimes for Montreal. Now, according to published reports, which I think it makes him one of the first athletes to ever be diagnosed, he was one of the first major athletes to be diagnosed with bipolar disorder, which a lot of people know it's a problem with multiple personalities and reacting to certain pressure or situation. Um, and what really happened, he had a problem with illiteracy. Again, according to published reports, he had a hard time reading to read and write, and he eked out a living pretty well as a minor league coach until again he came to prominence with the Arrows and the WHA. And if you watch that Gordie Howe movie that CBC did, I don't know how accurate that is, but they show Harvey not as a pitiful person, but the person that had had a few bad breaks where nobody really supported him. Now, there's an arena named after him in NDG, the Confederation Arena, or former Confederation Arena. It was the Doug Harvey Arena, and he basically was considered probably an example how hockey can go wrong if the career is not protected. But you got to understand with Doug Harvey, this guy was upper echelon for 27 seasons from junior all the way to the pros. And let me tell you something. If Doug Harvey would have done anything the NHL, and let's say he came up in the 70s into the 80s and 90s, Doug Harvey would get that Paul Coffey money. He would be paid what he's worth. So it was a combination of factors, all the stress he went through, the mental health issues, the drinking, the illiteracy, all kind of stuff. But you cannot take away because those 6 Stanley Cups in the 1950s into 1960s, you'll never see a defenseman, in my opinion, ever win 6 cups with one team ever again. You might see a player, but you're not going to see a defenseman. You might see a Sidney Crosby or, because to be the quarterback, for Doug Harvey to win 6 Stanley Cups with Montreal is comparable to a Tom Brady or Roger Staubach or Joe Montana to win multiple Super Bowls. You need somebody like Doug Harvey or like the quarterback. But Harvey for me, and I always consider very underrated. I know it's kind of bizarre to say someone wins 6 Stanley Cups and all these Norris trophies is underrated, but the NHL has not been the same since he left, and a lot of people mimicked his style. I know Bobby Orr was kind of the unofficial successor. Bobby Orr is a lot more offensive player, better skater, but Doug Harvey's presence on the ice was like Bobby Orr. When you had the puck, he was going to do something. And I know one thing though. Like I said, you look at overall stats that he had. You know, for a defenseman back in the day to have 40 to 40 to 50 assists a season, extremely consistent. And he wasn't really a goal scorer, but being that playmaker, and he wasn't scared also to drop the gloves and be aggressive because he knew his role. Very rarely would miss a game. Very rarely injured. Anyway, an outstanding player. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is my latest in the series of podcasts on some of the Montreal Canadiens elite of the last number of years. We hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a like, a subscribe, or a comment if you can. Keep things popular. I had some people tell me in recent months, not too many journalists and sports editors like me, that podcasts direct tributes to veteran players. I'm going to stick with the Montreal Canadiens for now because that's my expertise. I'm not a big fan of the Toronto Maple Leafs because the majority of their players were so hassled by Ballard. I can't be objective as to what he might have done or might have not have done. Only Lanny McDonald really rose above, really. Sittler was ruined. A lot of players were ruined. Frank Behalvers was ruined. He was never the same, even though he won cups in Montreal and played WHA. He's never been the same. Actually, I'm thinking about doing one on Paul Henderson. Definitely he should make it in the Hockey Hall of Fame. That's a given. So that'll be a Captain Obvious podcast. Again, on this COVID Wednesday, we wish you the best of luck. Stay safe. And as we like to say in the North Shore, especially at the old Memorial Gardens, now gone, the Charlotte Arena, now gone, and the Insurance Ice Palace, not gone but renovated. Keep your stick in the ice. You never know when the mayor of Dalhousie will talk about the time he played with Jim Lawrence and Derek Sanderson. Ask Clem Tremblay about that. That might be a future podcast too. How the mayor of Dalhousie played with, all these great players with the Niagara Flyers. I might do one on them. Who knows? Have a good day. Bye.